this is not an issue of the Flask, like I almost said it was. This is Mankiller issue 9. This is the second part of this story, or if you want, it is the fourth part of this crossover with the Flask series. I think after this issue, we are done with Evasion in Mankiller's book, but we can for a few more issues with the aftermath over in the Flask. One of the twists of this intertitle crossover is that the Mankiller issues are written so much better than the Flask ones. It almost feels unfair to do this, to pair the two books together like this. So far, our two heroes have wound up ambushed by shape-shifty aliens. Mankiller was made to look like a real rube, falling for their shape-shifty tricks. But right now, both the heroes, the Flask and Mankiller, they have been bested by their alien foes, who have kidnapped Fidel Castro and Willie West's mom. Also, Fidel Castro and Willie West's mom are being written like a proper romantic pairing. We get some efficiently recapped story here, everything we need to know. And one of the quirks of this little crossover is, unbelievably, in Mankiller's title, we have gotten a greater acknowledgement of the death of Willie West's dad. In the last issue of Mankiller, it had a bunch of pages with Willie West's dad that all formed the shape of setup for his sacrifice in Evasion Book 2. And then here, we quickly get a better understanding of what actually happened than we did in the Flask issue, which just mentioned what happened in Evasion. If you never read the main Evasion stuff, from these issues, you would understand what happened to Willie West's dad better from issues of Mankiller than from issues of Willie West's own series. Speaking of things handled a bit differently between the two, Fidel Castro is a lot less of a saint in this. He's not exactly demonized, but he is definitely not portrayed as this really nice, understanding guy. And one thing that is funny is even though the aliens have taken him hostage, throughout his entire stint as a captive, he is still smoking a cigar. So, what has happened is the shape-shifty aliens, they didn't realise that the invasion is over, that the invaders have retreated and surrendered. So we get some Kevin Griffin style stuff here, with them bickering back and forth about being stranded on Earth and who is to blame for it. This bit is pretty funny too. Mankiller reasons that actually if the shape-shifty aliens killed Willie West's mom, it wouldn't be so bad because she is a pain in the arse. But of course, he is a hero, so he cannot let them kill an innocent person, even if she is an annoying hag. It's actually a sequence that shows how capable Mankiller is. He takes down all the aliens by himself. And then he saves the 2 hostages with relative ease. Willie West's mom spends most of the issue being carried around by men. And then the Flask finally shows up and he stops the aliens from shooting the 3 of them. And we get the obvious beat with one of the shape-shifty aliens impersonating his mom, and him not immediately being able to tell which is real. Not just that, but another one transforms into his dad, and the 2 false parents convince Willie West that Mankiller is the bad guy here. Criticism time. Why doesn't Fidel Castro or his real mom say something? You can't tell it is the real Fidel Castro because he always has a cigar. So the Flask starts running around and beating the tar out of Mankiller. But Mankiller, he is able to trip the Flask up and throw him aside. He honestly comes off quite well in this issue. You would hope so. It is his series. But he seems... Well, I have read all his appearances in Suicide Squad. I've had about 6 different copies of his first appearance. And I got the idea he was just a skilled fighter. He wasn't anywhere near Deathstroke levels. He wasn't anywhere near Batman. I thought he'd be someone who could maybe beat a Robert. Someone who could maybe beat Ara. But after this, I think he might actually be able to go toe-to-toe with Deathstroke, or to competently fight Batman. There is some strategy too, like here, instead of fighting the Flask, he meditates as a means of convincing the Flask that he is obviously not a shape-shifty alien. So Willie West, his mom, and Castro beat up all the aliens. And then there is this kinda interesting bit where Mankiller shoots the 2 aliens posing as Fidel Castro and Willie West's mom, somehow with one blast, even though they are stood quite far apart from each other. We get a corny explanation that he could detect the shape-shifty aliens, but he forgot about that feature of his mask up to this point in the story. I have some very bad news for my viewers, though. This issue totally tortures the Ma West Fidel Castro romance. I know they managed to attract a large amount of shippers, but here she decides that actually Fidel Castro, he is a dictator, and that is not a very attractive quality in a man. I am purposely skipping the last pages of some of these evasion tie-ins because they show something that happens in Evasion Book 3, which I will cover eventually. For now, we are done with Mankiller. We do have some more Flask that I will get to, but they are set after Book 3. If you want more and more Evasion, and now you cannot get enough of it, I have thought of another good two-parter between titles to review next. And I am looking forward to revisiting them. This issue, I really think I need to track down more of this series. These tie-ins have been really solid. I have a few other issues of this series, but these are definitely better than the others that I have read. I will have to give it 7 thumbs in the upright position.